Hi, I'm Paul Baxendale, and welcome to the third part of my series about relationships. As bodybuilders, or just as men and women, we all go through life needing to make relationships work if we are to fulfill our own purposes and if we are to help and to guide and be a part of others' goals in life too. Whether they are relationships of son and daughter, husband or wife, significant other to significant other, life is so much more enjoyable and easier when we work hard to make our relationships work. Now, some may say you shouldn't have to make a relationship work. It either does or it doesn't. Well, I've never yet met a married couple together for more than 50 years who have not said that they have had to work together to make the relationship successful and for it to work. And what is work anyway? It is merely putting your mind and attention to ensure that you become better at something. And surely we must be prepared to put our minds and our attention towards that someone we truly love. We should all want to have a better relationship, especially with your intimate partner. And if you are not willing or concerned about working to make it better, then perhaps you are not worthy for the love of the person you're with. Again, reverse it. How would you feel if your partner said that they weren't prepared or concerned about working to ensure your relationship continues to not only continue, but actually to get better, and the two of you become closer rather than further apart than when you first met and fell in love? I believe it all starts with the tiny little things. Remember, in life, that your dues are the sum of individual acts. Pay attention to each of these as you do your duty. Just methodically complete your task. Now today, I'm wanting to give you a more personal perspective as to why I believe in the value of long-term committed relationships and why I am very much against short-term meaningless hookups where emotion is allowed to rule the body rather than your reason, forsaking your promise to yourself to live virtuously with honour and integrity, honesty and self-worth. You see, I don't think you can separate the two. With honour and integrity comes living through reasoned decisions and not responding to emotional pulls to the base things in life, where your self-worth suffers as you steer towards dishonour and impurity and ultimately towards evil. And should you do so, then it's highly likely that you will end up in a very bad place, losing self-worth and respect. That's a living hell. So attend to yourself like the man or the woman you deserve to be, and treat every action as though it were of vital importance, and decide with each action to make it one of honour, dignity, virtue and honesty. Only attend to yourself and resolve to be a good man in every act that you do. Living virtuously is equal to living in accordance with one's experience of the actual course of nature. So today I'll share some of the mistakes I've made and some of the good decisions I've made and some light-hearted but serious stories of the way men and women have behaved at the gyms I have frequented over the last 40 years and also the nightclubs that I've worked at when I worked as security for over 10 years. There's some real gems in there. Actually, there's some horror stories too when I think back. Have I seen and witnessed some poor behaviour over those years? Perhaps behaviours I didn't think people were capable of actually, but then I am a historian, so I do know about evil behaviour and have spent years trying to understand why people are able and how people are able to do some of the things we as humans have done to others. But the problem with learning history is that it often seems so distant and removed from you personally, and therefore you cannot relate to evil deeds and wrongful behaviours. But those people in history were just like you and me. And so never think you can for a moment stop in your quest for honour, virtue and integrity and courage in life. And allow yourself a night off where you just let loose, for you're only having fun, aren't you? Or everyone else is doing it, so it must be fine. Do you really want to end up like everybody else? Why are people today so unhappy and desperate for meaning in their lives? There's a connection here. And so let's try and thread it out a little bit and understand how our actions dictate not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. Yes, I've seen terrible things on the door, and I've seen degrading and pathetic behaviour in gyms at times. What may start out as having fun and innocent can become a living nightmare if you are not careful, resulting in lives that have been ruined due to reacting with emotion when reason should have been your chosen response. But regardless, they are the truth. Real events that show how well people can live at their best and how people can behave at their worst. Now, I suppose the first thing I have to mention is the connection between alcohol and unvirtuous behaviour and violence, sadly. In fact, it's frightening how often alcohol is involved in poor behaviour and bad decisions that are completely founded upon emotional response rather than reason. Of all murders, some 50% are committed by people who are drunk. And that 50% of all murderers were drunk when they committed those acts. Honestly, if there was any drug in history that should have been made illegal, it's alcohol. Now, I don't believe in making any substance illegal. Prohibition has never been proven to work at any time. And the solution is not in stopping people having legal access to any drug, but the building and educating of a person's character to ensure that they grow up never wanting to be in a state where they are not in complete control of their reasoned actions. Is it not better to teach a boy how to become a man and to teach a young girl how to become a good woman than to offer them little in the way of ethical education and to discuss and debate how best to live a life than to try and control their behaviour later when as adults they are restricted only by what is legal and what is not, instead of knowing and acting on what is right and what is wrong. A good person is invincible, for they don't rush into contests in which they aren't the strongest. For the only contest the good person enters is that of their own reasoned choice. How can such a person not be invincible? Now, I'm not saying don't drink, but I am saying take great care with alcohol, as it has ruined more lives and been the death of more people than any other drug on this planet. Why? It makes some people lose their inhibitions and their mental safety guards. I personally never drink, as I don't enjoy it, and nor do I think it would enhance my life in any way. I actually love being sober and making every reasoned decision for myself in life. I'm also aware that some people look to me as a father figure or as a man they can trust. And that trust is valuable to me. It's gold. And for someone to have trust in me is one of the greatest compliments anyone could give me. It means that they know if they tell me bad news, that I will listen and care. How in some way I might be able to help, or at least I'll listen, and to keep that information to myself. It means that if they tell you good news, you will be delighted for them. And I mean really, truly joyful in their success, and that you want more of it for them. Many people today, and always have been, are insecure, so that on hearing bad news, they're almost gleeful in your misery. because it makes them feel at least they don't have that problem to contend with. And on hearing good news, they smile, but they are inwardly jealous because it reminds them of what they have not done or where they have not succeeded. And when someone really makes it good, they are almost willing for you to fail so that you are again back on their same low level. Does that ring any bells with you? Well, if so, remove yourself from those people. They're not your friends. They are certainly not worthy of being your husband or your wife. Just like becoming a father or a mother, becoming a husband or a wife, it never comes with a how-to manual. More often than not, we copy partly what we learned from ourselves as children watching our parents or carers, and then either following that same behaviour or deciding that we did not like that aspect. So we resolve to never parent our way to our children like that again. Now, this doesn't always work, as I'm sure you've all heard about people who were abused as children and then sadly repeat that abuse to themselves and to their children. But if you choose to live your life by life's highest standards, and to me the Stoics' 4 virtues are hard to dismiss, those of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Look, no one said it would be easy to live this way. No one said it would be easy to become a great athlete or a great bodybuilder either. But you have chosen to do so, haven't you? In exactly the same way, some people choose to live life with values and with standards that set them apart from most other people. And there it is. It is your choice to live this way. Good people will do what they find honourable to do, even if it requires hard work. They'll do it even if it causes them injury. They'll do it even if it will bring danger. Again, they won't do what they find base, even if it brings wealth, pleasure, or power. Nothing will deter them from what is honourable, and nothing will lure them into what is base. Again, ask yourself, what is it that you would rather be? A great man or a great woman who lives their life according to their purpose in nature, or someone who is forgotten as soon as their allotted life is over? For life is fleeting for all of us. And do we wish to live in eternity for what good we have done, or never known except as for dust and bones? To live your life this way requires courage. Now, that doesn't mean you approach life fearing nothing, but it means approaching life taking that right action, that right decision, that right choice, regardless of the fear that you will feel. You believe that you don't have this type of courage, that to do so would probably mean losing so-called friends and perhaps living a life with less people around you, perhaps a lonely journey. And you love people, so you would rather carry on pleasing them and pleasing your own fleeting moments of instant gratification that you know will slowly, gradually erase your soul, your self-worth, and that person that you could have been. Take heart, friends. You won't be lonely. What you will find is that when you begin to live your life to a higher set of values and integrity, then you will instantly attract those people to you with the same beliefs, and then you will find doors opening, opportunities being created for you, and people around you who will truly want your success, but will also hold you to account to what you know to be right. So if you behave with poor reason or through emotion one day, then they will immediately call you out on it and remind you of the person that you said you had chosen to be. Now, how does this affect your intimate relationships? Well, just like any other relationship, you will begin to attract those men or women to who you also truly value those traits. And let's be honest, Who doesn't want their partner to be a man or a woman of integrity, of virtue, honesty, and courage? You will have put yourself at the top of the pack of men and women who are attractive and desired by others. As a man, you will attract the highest value women, with the women with self-worth, integrity, femininity, beauty, and that inner glow that reminds me of the mythological goddess Hera, the wife of Zeus, and who, according to legend, presided over Mount Olympus as the queen of gods. She who was goddess of marriage, commitment, childbirth, and protector of married women. She was worshipped. It is believed before Greek civilization reached its peak, and it was then associated with Mother Nature and the life force itself. She who was desired by many men and gods, but only Zeus was deserving of her marriage. If we look to mythology, then who would represent the archetypal male counterpart? Is it Zeus or Apollo? No. I think the closest equivalent would be Heracles or Hercules. Heracles is the Greek earlier name for the Roman Hercules. Born in dangerous circumstances, he was renowned for his strength from the start, courageous and obedient to the gods. Hercules was set 12 tasks or labours that he is remembered for. But Hercules, who subdued and destroyed monsters, bandits and criminals, was justly famous and renowned for his great courage. His great and glorious reputation was worldwide, and so firmly entrenched that he will always be remembered. In fact, the ancients honoured him with his own temples, altars, ceremonies and priests. But it was his wisdom and his great soul that earned those honours. Noble blood, physical strength and political power just aren't enough. So as bodybuilders, we can then take something from mythology to help us in our everyday lives. Now, is it a coincidence that both Steve Reeves and Reg Park played the role of Hercules in the movies? Arnold did also. No, for great physical strength and wisdom and his great soul was what made him great. Hercules also, in legend, fathered many children, which I believe is a metaphorical lesson hidden within the myth to illustrate that having all of those traits also made him highly attractive as a mate to women. So we've discussed what we must aim for in our character and our soul as men and women. But how does that translate to life? And in particular, how does it relate to my life? Well, sadly, I did not have this knowledge when I was young. But I do think myself fortunate that I did have some great role models when it came to learning, courage, the importance of virtue and integrity, and of telling the truth. Did that mean I didn't make mistakes? Far from it. But let me share some more personal details of my life, that you may not make the mistakes that I made, and possibly learn some things that I did do right. So what was my youth like? As I've said in previous posts, I had a number of mentors around me. I sought them out, and in doing so, they undoubtedly saved me from many, many errors and mistakes. But did I make some? Of course I did, and too many for my liking. As I look back, but being wrong is never a negative unless you don't learn from the experience. If you learn from it and change your perspective or thoughts about something, then it becomes a positive. Now, my father was a fairly strict man. He worked hard, so at the end of each day, he would often escape into his own world of music beneath his headphones. I don't blame him. He was a teacher, so he was around children all day. However, that did mean that he had little energy left over for engaging with his own children. Now, there's no judgment there. I have no resentment because of that. I understand it, but it's also something that I learned from, and I tried to ensure that I would commit to being in my children's lives fully. Whether I was successful or not, All I can say is that each and every one of my children are strong individuals who are pursuing their own purposes in life. Strangely, I never ever tried to encourage any of them into going to the gym. However, they all go. They all keep very fit, are very healthy, and my son, who is 17, he's more committed to his training than I am now. Now, how did that work? Osmosis, maybe, or through watching and learning, or through their own reasoned choice? I don't know, but I hope it's the latter. And my mother and father had a very good, loving relationship. I honestly can't say I ever heard them argue. Now, that's not to say they didn't argue, but they made sure that us children weren't around if they did. So as my father was not around in a sense of being engaged with me, my martial arts instructor was my first proper mentor, teaching me old school values. Now, he'd been in the army in Malaysia in jungle combat, so he taught me discipline and self-worth, strictness of mind, of body, and strength of my own mind, to not follow whatever it was my friends around me at school were doing for kicks. Instead, I was focused on becoming a great martial artist and moving to Malaysia to teach. Well, that never happened, because I also got into the gym at 14 to help my martial arts, but I found that I loved that even more. It was a more complete, it was a lifestyle that adopted healthy eating, training, and also healthy resting. I also found that I was hanging out with people much older than I was, but accepted nonetheless. There was a true brotherhood and sisterhood of iron, a camaraderie that still exists to a certain degree to this day. Now, what I also had was a love and a passion for old 1940s and 1950s movies, cars, music and clothes, which in the late 70s and early 80s meant that I was a rockabilly, as there were many subcultures back then: punks, mods, romantics. Dorian was the skinhead back then. It was all based around music, fashion and social statements. So watching all those old movies gave me a social and emotional mentorship in traditional values, which I found were very different from those of my friends at school, and also to those of people at the gym to some degree. Although what I would say is that it isn't uncommon for the best bodybuilder, male and female, to also be the one with the best ethics and the best self-worth. Perhaps because they knew people looked up to them, that they ensured, or maybe that's part of why they became the best. They acted with honour, with integrity. They were noble and were honest and truthful. Of course, there were always the guys at the gym who tried to sleep around with as many women as they possibly could. And they felt that having a built physique helped them in that. I don't know about that. But the research on females' short and long-term mating strategies does suggest that health and wide shoulders are found attractive by most women. But that is only part of the equation. I'm sure you know guys at your gym who are just the same as that. Perhaps you currently are like that yourself. Anyway, at the same time, there were also those gym girls that had been out with pretty much most of the guys you knew, or guys from other gyms. And sadly, those girls never got anything worthy as far as a serious long-term mate who was honourable, virtuous and courageous and honest, as all the best men always want and always get the best women, and vice versa. Which girl would want the guy she knows has been with every girl around town? How can she trust his honesty, not to stray and not be unfaithful? Likewise, if a man sees a girl go with several guys at his gym that he knows, and then he finds out that she likes him, would he seriously consider her, or going out with her as a long-term commitment, or even as a short-term? How can he be sure that she will be faithful? You know the old Italian saying, mama's baby, papa's maybe. Well, there is some truth to that old saying, as how can any man know for 100% certainty that the child his woman is carrying is his? Us men, we can't ever be 100%, as there is no visible sign to say which and why of these matters of choice became a decision who to choose for a long-term mate are so important for both sexes. Imagine a woman whose man has had affairs with 3 other women, and then he has to pay child support for them as well as look after hers. Now she has to share his resources with other women's children, and evolutionarily speaking, that often was a death toll to the child, as often during history a man could only ever provide enough for his own family, let alone 3 or 4 others. And let me address the issue of short-term relationships. By now you all know that I don't think that they are positive for either a man or a woman. Now, they've always existed and always will exist, and they will happen because men are normally driven by their hormonal emotional responses, and women also are not without having those same responses. But for a minute, let me just break down why I believe it is best to leave sexual relations until either marriage or a serious long-term committed relationship. We could begin by going over the standard stuff you heard at school. Oh, you could get an STD or an unwanted pregnancy. Boom. All of a sudden, that 6-hour burst of emotion, or maybe a 5 or 10 minute quickie, has become a substantially more serious thing all of a sudden. Pregnancy. Well, what happens then? Well, I'm not going to go into that discussion today, but it's fraught with distress, emotion, and heartache. Whatever way you believe is right or wrong in those instances, whatever it is a new human life that has the same potential for greatness of life as you and I do. There is no winner in those situations. Data is universal, cross-culturally and globally, that children of single parents fare worse in nearly every social, emotional and intellectual marker than those from a 2-parent family. Just the cold hard truth. But there are always exceptions. But it's not the ideal setup for a child. If anyone wants to research the studies that have been the foundation of the information here, please feel free to ask for them, or even better. And in doing so, you will educate yourself further. Try looking up the studies yourself, not just one study, but several studies, and see if you can find a common theme to the conclusions of those studies. Then that takes away the possibility of it being a one-off or even a biased study, which does happen. Now, if you've been guilty of these behaviours for whatever reason, and it's nearly always a case of very low self-esteem and worth and an almost obsessive desire for validation from the other sex that causes it, then does it mean that you are forever doomed never to get the man or woman that you truly want as your lifelong companion, someone who will share your greatest and your worst moments, be by your side as you experience the magic moments that come so sparingly but remain so powerfully lodged in your memories? Are you now having to accept that you will have to accept the very best of what men or women will take you as their partner? No, I don't believe so. Although ancient myths tend to show heroes and villains as either good or evil, great or lowly. For example, Achilles was always the greatest warrior in Greece, and the side he fought for never changed. I think it is with the beginnings of deep philosophical thought, such as Stoicism, that we begin to see the concept of people having the choice to change every day, every moment. And in that change in your personal philosophy and your personal beliefs and values means not only that you can indeed become great from any point of your life, that a slave can become as great as an emperor. I believe that is also the basic tenet behind Christianity, that through Jesus' suffering and death, he took away our sins, that we can inwardly die ourselves, only to be resurrected like a phoenix from the ashes, to become someone who follows and acts as Jesus himself would have acted. So with the development of more complex philosophies and religions, perhaps made possible by the development of more civilized civilizations, it appears that the greatest minds did come to the conclusion that yes, you can change, but to do so, first you must die, not in a literal sense, but in a metaphorical sense. In a very real way though, you must truly lose something within you that is what caused you to live as you had done, in order that you be resurrected into a new life, and that the new you, that from the moment you live your life with every action lived through reason and based on virtue, honesty, integrity, courage and love. So yes, I believe that no matter how you have made lived before, you can still attract the man or the woman that the new you deserves, but only if you are prepared to let that old life die, that you may find a resurrection of sorts and rise again with the potential of greatness. The reasons and the solutions are all based in evolutionary biology and psychology, and have been tested over and over by research study after study. And what we find is that even after 60 years of affluence in the West, we cannot erase 1 million years of evolutionary biology to ensure our offspring survives. So how did I choose who I wanted to go out with as a young man? And did I change my choices as I got older and hopefully matured? Well, my tastes were strangely similar to those of most other men that studies show have preferences in the women that demonstrate, although we have our own personal individual preferences for certain things. For example, you may find that you're particularly attracted to dark-haired women or blonde-haired women, or vice versa. Just as a piece of extra information, the reason evolutionary biologists believe that men prefer blondes, yes, they even made a movie about it starring Marilyn Monroe, is that hair goes darker with age, and even fair-haired women or men see their hair darken with age. Therefore, blonde, fine hair was a sign of youth and fertility, they suggest. There's also the factor that blonde hair is genetically rare, and henceforth, like anything rare, it was valued and prized. There is and always has been a preference for younger women by males. This goes down to young women being the most able to become pregnant. A woman's reproductive ability declines as she ages. By the time she is 40, her ability to conceive is much lower, and by 50 it's very almost zero. So we can understand the age preference, evolutionarily speaking. But is there anything else the studies can tell us that is noticeable in mainstream society? Well, the age difference between men and women in relationships remains remarkably stable in many cultures, especially in the West. It averages out at around about 4, the male being 4 years older than the female. Now, perhaps the male matures older or later, or perhaps the male has shown his capacity to provide and pursue his purpose later than the female. Evolved standards of beauty are another highly contended, but in terms of research, very common and stable in terms of their results. Men prefer women who have clear skin, symmetrical facial features, long shiny hair, muscle tone, full lips, and importantly, the right waist to hip ratio, which surely must be explained again in the evolutionary capability to provide offspring. What is interesting is the emphasis of clear skin and symmetry in facial features, which is both found in men and in women in terms of their long-term mating strategies. Now, was this told the male or the female? Was that the person was not diseased or was likely to be healthier in order to fight off disease should they become ill. Now, hair is another interesting one, and I'm sure men have often wondered why women go to so much trouble over the shininess of their hair. But it's true. Men do prefer a woman with long, shiny hair, as again, it's a basic indicator of health of the potential mate. Now, all of this talk of potential mates is very scientific, but I wanted to explain to you that these things have been studied for decades, and the results are similar cross-culturally, which means that there is no social constructionism involved in their making. They have come from evolutionary mechanisms. What about weight and body type? Well, this is a fascinating one, as women actually judge themselves far more harshly in terms of what they think is desirable than men actually do desire. One study in the US showed that when asked out of 9 body types which ones would be most desirable to men, the women judged a figure that was slightly slimmer than the average, whilst the men actually confirmed that they preferred the actual average body size for a woman to be the most attractive. The waist to hip ratio is another important physical factor. Just as the judges like to see wide delts on men and women on a bodybuilding stage with a tight waist, so too do men prefer a low waist to hip ratio, more curvy, than a high waist to hip ratio, which scientists believe signaled that the woman is young, healthy, and that she was not pregnant. Now, men put a much higher premium on a woman's attractiveness in their preferences for a long-term mate, much more so than women. But women mostly always do choose a healthy, attractive, masculine man as a preference for short-term relationships, especially during the peak week of their month when they are their most fertile. Women always choose the most masculine, attractive men also for a long-term relationship. But other factors were equally as important in their choices, such as occupational status and, interestingly enough, the perceived attractiveness of the man to other women. Now, male and female preferences cannot always equal actual mating behaviour, since there is always a limited supply of the highest valued males and the highest valued females. Strangely enough, the best men often mate with the best women in terms of physical appearance, desirable behavioural characteristics, health indicators, and similar cultural background. Now, one of the most surprising facts that I discovered while I was researching evolutionary biology at university was the impact of smell on a woman's unconscious preferability to a male. Given t-shirts from selected men who had worn a t-shirt for a day, the women all commented, without seeing the men, just by smelling the t-shirts, that there were ones that were standing out in terms of desirability. Yes, women actually preferred the smell of some men's t-shirts to others. In reality, those were the t-shirts with men with much more masculine faces had worn. Now, how could that be? Research hypothesized that men with more masculine faces had higher levels of circulating testosterone, both as infants and boys at puberty, causing the jaw lines to become more square and their faces more masculine in appearance. And to make it even more interesting, the women's preference to those t-shirts increased as they become closer to their most fertile follicular phase of their cycle. Well, I guess that there is some scientific basis to suggest that the athletic physique is more attractive to women than the ordinary man's. But a full-on pro bodybuilder's physique? Well, that's probably another story entirely. Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in your thought, for the human spirit is coloured by such impressions. Okay, enough science for now, and let's get back to some real life experiences, as I'm sure you want to know how badly I have screwed up in my life. No, seriously, what is my philosophy? What do I think before taking action or even speaking a word? For I am always very careful with my words, always, knowing how much they can heal or they can harm. But what is philosophy? Doesn't it simply mean preparing ourselves for what may come? So what should each of us say to every trial we face? This is what I've trained for this is my discipline. When I was at school, I dated what I thought was the most attractive in looks and character girl in school at the time. She was also very feminine and a very caring person. Not surprisingly, she later went into nursing. But after we finished our school year romance, I think she got fed up with my constant insistence on playing old Elvis records. Yes, long before there were CDs, we had vinyl discs. Now, being into the 50s, I also had many original 78 RPMs and 45s, which would probably be worth a fortune today. In fact, those records did bring me a lot of money, and they helped pay the cost of the tickets to bring my wife and children back to the UK with me when I returned here after our emigration to Australia. We went out there originally with a view to live permanently, but whilst there, I had what I can only describe as a vision or a message of purpose, an epiphany perhaps. Now, there was no blinding lights nor angels with trumpets, but I very much felt a sensation within my heart and in my mind that my true purpose was actually waiting to be discovered back in the UK. I know, how could I leave the beautiful Sydney with its beaches close by and a great lifestyle and a wife and 3 children by then, to return us all to what? I didn't know, except I had been preaching as a lay preacher in churches around the Sydney area. Now, you will probably recall me saying that I'm not a Christian, and that is because I cannot truly say I believe what a Christian needs to believe. I just don't know what God is, in all honesty. It's just I do believe there is a universal power which has put order into the universe, as there is simply just too much order in life and the world not for there to have been a creator. I hope one day to know for sure who he or she is. Anyway, we're getting off topic again, so let's get back to relationships. So once in the 6th form, I was then training in gyms and also training daily in martial arts, with my other sports taking a sideshow to it by then. As everybody in the gym and at the club were older than I was, it wasn't surprising that I started dating older women. So at 16 and 17, I was taking women of 20, 21 and even one woman of 24 out to the movies and dates, but never to clubs or pubs, as I didn't like those places due to the alcohol and the impact that alcohol had on other people's behaviours at these places. Dating older women seems quite odd looking back now, but at the time it never felt odd, it never felt strange being around these older women. You know, all my friends at the time were in their 20s when I was 16, 17. It's just, I'm surprised that I appealed to them. In all honesty, being just a young adult, it seems surprising that a woman of 24 years old would even consider going out with a 17-year-old, but I'm sure I must have acted with more maturity than most of the 16 or 17-year-olds, or they wouldn't have even looked at me. It did, however, give me valuable experience in learning how to talk to and learning how to behave with women, and to really get on with them, enjoying their company and being at ease in any situation with them. So ever since then, I've never been nervous around women or talking with them. At 18, I met my first serious girlfriend. Now, she was also into the 1950s music and the entire 1950s scene at the time. So no surprise, we dated as we thought a couple would have done in the 1950s. No sex until marriage, we agreed. Now, in me doing that, it shows that it can be done. And if we had got married, then I'm sure that we would have remained together for life. But it wasn't to be. We dated for years. And I was starting to get serious about bodybuilding then. And my lifestyle was drifting away from what she wanted out of life and from me. A difficult decision, but I knew she would find someone better suited to her. And I had dreams of my own that I knew I could never meet, living with that lifestyle and therefore making both her and myself unhappy. I'm not sure if we ever argued, or if we did, it was very, very rare. She is a lovely woman, and I'm sure she's still a lovely woman to this day. It's nice to look back on a relationship and know that you acted with honour and virtue. And despite it not working out, you never left it with anything other than positive feelings for the other person. I can honestly say that I would have regretted marrying that girl if it wasn't for the fact that I met my wife. And of all the regrets in my world and in my life, the greatest regret is that I hadn't met my wife sooner, so that I could have loved her longer. I've been very lucky when it comes to the women in my life. Although saying it that way glosses over the many mistakes, and boy, were there some monster mistakes in there. Whilst I was starting my bodybuilding career again, I dated another lovely girl. Of course they were nice. I wouldn't want to go out with someone who wasn't. Although I guess some people do. But my big mistakes were in firstly being consumed completely with my focus on becoming a pro bodybuilder and living my life 24/7 around bodybuilding, literally to the minute. Eating on the hour, getting edgy if I was late for a meal by 5 minutes. You may know that feeling yourself, or that extreme level of dedication that's needed to be the best. But did I have the genetic potential to become one of the best? Well, actually Dorian gave me some great personal advice while I was training with him that was really valuable, and looking back made so much sense. He was truly helping me to ensure that I didn't make a huge mistake. We were sat down on the sofa one day after training. I had a British qualifier coming up, and he had the Mr. Olympia coming up. And he must have reflected about my situation as he did with his own career. When he made a promise to Debbie that if he didn't make the top 3 in his first pro show, he was going to retire, as it wasn't worth the physical, financial and emotional toll unless he was going to break through. Well, he suddenly asked me if I thought I could win my pro card, which was a very difficult thing back then, as only one pro card was given out to the men and one pro card given out to the women every year. Now, I thought about it and I said, yes, I do think I can win my pro card. He agreed with me, surprisingly, and said, yes, I think you can too. But do you think you can take a top 3 placing in a pro show? Well, I'd never thought about that. My focus had always been on solely getting that pro card. So I thought about it seriously then, and then the reality and the truth dawned on me. No, I'm not sure I can. I'd seen top pros up close in temple and on stage. They were like another species of human. Their lines, their symmetry and their muscle bellies were just extraordinary. And I knew that I may have been good, but I wasn't that good. Now Dorian said to me, now I would never tell you what to do with your life, Paul, but only the top 3 or 4 pro bodybuilders in the world make serious money. Maybe don't put all your eggs in one basket. Look around at other careers. And then he told me about the promise that he had made to Debbie about retiring if he didn't make the top 3 at the Night of the Champions. Whoa. I was struck dumb for a while until it really sunk in, and then I admitted to myself, he was right. Next to him, even at the same body weight, I was £310, he was £310. He made me look like a stick. Poor Dillett, who had been in a few weeks earlier, he'd looked like he'd come from another planet. So I decided I would run my gym and still compete as long as I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't sacrifice my entire life for this thing. The trouble was, it was too late for one relationship. She had been with me for maybe 3 years. The girl whose mother lived near Birmingham, and I knew that I had neglected her emotionally and that she had put up with my entire bodybuilding obsession without complaint. Now, should she have complained if she felt that I was neglecting her? Maybe. I know my wife now. She would quickly let me know if I was allowing one aspect of my life to get even slightly lopsided. But she had a different personality, and ultimately, she just one day packed her bags and said goodbye and left. Was I upset? The terrible part of it is, no. Maybe I kind of knew it was coming, or even worse, I was so focused on my bodybuilding that I didn't really care all that much. There were always girls at the gym who were interested in me. Anyway, so I always knew that if I wanted company and someone to share nice moments and have days out with, there was never going to be a shortage of nice girls to share them with. Big mistake. Big mistake. Yes, there were always girls ready to go out with me, but I hadn't seen what was the big problem. The big problem was me. I could have gone out with girl after girl, all of them nice, lovely people, and not the girls who were doing the rounds with the other gym members. Not those either. But if I didn't change, then the pattern would always repeat itself time and time again. I think part of the problem was that being known as a nice guy meant that girls knew they would be respected and treated with all those virtues that I stood for back then. And then I had a problem with not only being attracted to nice girls who weren't a part of the gym dating thing, but I also saw myself as a caring man. So I would often find myself with women who had massive issues with which I felt I could fix or make better, then make them happy. The problem with this approach is that you're not a professional. Their issues were significant mental health problems, which I thought in my conceit that I could fix and make better, only then to get bored once they were happy and then look around for another nice girl with a problem to help. It was a disastrous strategy, and one I implore you guys to make sure you are not falling into when you enter into a relationship. Of course, some girls with problems will also see you as a big, muscular and hopefully caring man, as the solution to their problems too. But you won't be. All you will end up doing is wasting their time and yours, and slowly eroding the reputation that you had as the good guy, if you had one at all, that is. The thing that fascinated me was that after I had met my wife and we had begun to go steady, and I had upsized my gym from a very small spit and sawdust hardcore pit to a fancy health club type place with enormous floor coverage, sunbeds, aerobics room and main gym floor with a hardcore separate room and a ladies only gym upstairs too. My old girlfriend turned up one evening and said she wanted us to be together again, as she had always known it had been my dream to own my gym. It was sad, really. I don't know if she wanted me back for what we had together or because I was now fulfilling my dreams. Regardless, I was now with my new girlfriend who I loved deeply, and I already knew, in fact I knew within the first 24 hours of being with this woman, that she was the woman I was going to spend the rest of my life with. So she left, and to this day I've never heard from her again. It's funny how I just knew there and then that my wife was the one for my lifetime, right from the very first day. Now, I'm not sure she felt the same way about me, though. You'd have to ask her about that. So what did I really want and need? Well, I didn't think I needed anyone. But don't ever be so arrogant to think that you have it all together. Just like steel upon steel, the perfect partner for a man who wants to become everything that he has the potential to be is a partner who will test him time and time again. She will sharpen him. Yes, of course she loves him, but she loves him so much that she is prepared to push his buttons. You know the ones, you know your weaknesses. In those aspects of your life that aren't as good as they could be, you're not pushing yourself to become the Hercules that you can be. Now, won't that cause arguments, you might ask? Well, maybe. But if it means that you will improve as a man, then by God, have an argument. Do you want to be virtuous or not? Do you have the courage to face your weaknesses and your demons head on or not? Or is the mighty feminine too powerful for your masculinity? Likewise for the women. Do not ever accept your man for who he is, but test him and challenge him to become the man that you know he can be. Or you never would have gone out with him in the first place. Or are you in need of too much validation? Do you need a needy man who pussyfoots around you, who cannot stand up to your emotional storms? If he can't, then how do you expect him to stand up to the storms of life? Or do you enjoy the fake, pathetic validation of men messaging you on social media? Do you send them a heart emoji or kisses in response, knowing that no man worth his soul would behave that way? If you do, stop. You want a man who is capable of changing your world and you his. Then stop with the easy validation of social media friends. BS. They're not your friends. They are men who would sleep with you given half the chance. And you are placating them, encouraging them, and by not telling them to stop. Especially if you already have a man, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Do you want to jeopardize your relationship for some easy fake validation from social media? Or from the gym lads who do the same with every single girl they meet in a gym? No. For your own sake and for your self-worth and your potential as the goddess that you could be. The one who dances across the waves of life with every possible emotion and loving every minute of it. Become your best. Now, I'm not going to tell you too much about my wife, as she doesn't enjoy people knowing about her business. Well, neither do I. But I guess in doing this website, I kind of gave up a lot of my privacy. And in order that you have faith in me telling you the truth, I had to show you that I am capable of telling my uncomfortable truths with you, as well as the great bodybuilding stories that they could gloss over any weakness or weak spots in my behaviour. All I will say is that we met in a gym. I was already a top national bodybuilder when we met. So when she first got to know me, it was years before we began dating. She knew what she was taking on. Plus her father was a bodybuilder himself. So the lifestyle wasn't a complete shock to her either. She has seen me at my best and at my worst. And neither surprises her. Her only mission is our family, and that we both grow together as we age together. Over 25 years now we've been together. We've travelled the world, had 4 children, and they all live close to us, some still with us. She knows me and she knows my weak areas. I know her and I know her weak areas. And so we go ahead looking forward to each coming year because we know it will bring adventure, excitement, but also the stability at the same time. Yes, she challenges my BS excuses when I don't give enough, which isn't as often these days. She never asks about my pain, my broken pelvis and my spinal stenosis, from falling through a collapsing set of stairs 10 years ago, because she knows I'll deal with my pain myself. I don't want her sympathy, nor her taking over of responsibilities that I could do because of it. Because of this, our relationship hasn't changed in dynamics since the accident. If anything, it's made it stronger and more open in its truth, and with even less margin for BS. She's a woman who knows I know her inside out, and vice versa. So, if I can help advise you with anything to do with relationships, it is to be truthful, never lie. For once a lie is found out, then truth is gone to some degree forever. Respect each other, allow each other to grow, and stay alongside each other to share the memories and to support each other if the need arises. Don't settle for anything but the best. You know when she or he isn't giving it to you or to life. Challenge them and remind yourself of the standards you must live by if you are to leave a legacy in your children and your own achievements. Be honest, love, be virtuous in all things. Have courage, act through reason and not emotion, but to use that emotion for the energy to support your integrity, and immediately stop anything you know you are doing wrong and choose instead to let that part of you die. Find out what that need or that weakness is and let it die, only to be resurrected anew, to live life forever with honour. The unjust person acts against the odds. For insofar as the nature of the universe made rational creatures for the sake of each other, with an eye toward mutual benefit based on true value and never for harm, anyone breaking nature's will obviously acts against the oldest of gods, Marcus Aurelius. Well, a bit of a rambling video today, friends, but an important one and a personal one for you all. But if I can leave you with anything, let me leave you with this. When those standards become hard to meet, when you are tempted to slide on your honesty or your virtue, remember this. There already always are 3 more damn reps in you. Dig deep, stand fast, and get every single one of those reps. 3 more reps, friends. Goodbye until a new series and of course my weekly blog post. Stay strong.